We all know the story summarized in this week's portion: the slavery in Egypt, our liberation, wandering 40 years in the desert, entering the promised land. You've seen the movie before. Why do we need to hear it again? The children of Israel are about to enter the land to conquer. Moses takes this opportunity for his final oration, which is pretty much the whole book of Devarim, Deuteronomy. And what does he say? He recounts the whole story, deja vu. Why are the children of Israel subjected to this retelling? The children of Israel had years to experience it, and undoubtedly, like good Jews, talked about it all the time. But Moses insists, at least one more time. They are where they should be, poised for the climax of the plot, the conquest of the land. What should Moses have said? Go forward and take the land that God is giving you. Sei gesund. Go in health. You've got this. Of course, the children of Israel would be anxious about the conquest of the land, the next chapter, the military battle. So Moses could have actually encouraged them. He could have told them they've earned it. We're up to the challenge. Don't we hear a lot today about self-esteem, about instilling courage and confidence? Moses evidently wasn't particularly into self-esteem. He reminds them incessantly of the past, their long journey, about how God made them hungry and gave them manna day in, day out for 40 years. Talk about repetition. How God made them thirsty and then provided the water. How God guided them through the wilderness, well, actually guided their wandering through the wilderness. It wasn't ways. Moses forced them to look back at their backslidings, how he was receiving the commandments when they were worshiping the golden calf, how they were attacked by Amalek, but only by looking upward could they prevail, how they were poised a generation earlier to make the conquest, but rebelled instead, how they rebelled repeatedly, fetched and wanted to go back to Egypt. In case the children of Israel still didn't get the message, Moses' message about who they were, Moses reminds them their redemption is not because they're so special, it's because of the merits of their ancestors. And the children of Israel aren't being given the land because of their merits either, but only because the evil of the current residents. How's that for a pep talk? Is this negativity why Moses couldn't enter the land? I actually wondered about that, but I don't think so. I believe Moses was giving them an inoculation, a vaccine, if you will, a vaccine against the new risks and perils they would encounter in their new home, in their ease and seeming independence. Quote, "For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land with streams and springs and fountains issuing from plain and hill, a land of wheat and barley, of vines, figs, and pomegranates, a land of olive trees and honey, a land where you may eat food without sin, where you will lack nothing, a land whose rocks are iron and from whose hills you can mine copper." Moses continues and describes the disease against which he is inoculating them. "Take care lest you forget the Lord your God and fail to keep his commandments, his rules, and his laws. When you have eaten your fill and have built fine houses to live in, and your herd and flocks have multiplied, and your silver and gold have increased, and everything you own has prospered, beware lest your heart grow haughty and you forget the Lord your God. And you say to yourselves, my own power and the might of my own hand have won this wealth for me. Remember that it is the Lord your God who gives you the power to get wealth." Commenting on this portion, Akev, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs summarizes this point. "There were times when you had no water, no food. You were exposed to the elements. You were attacked by enemies. You may think this was the test of your strength. It was not. The real challenge is not poverty, but affluence. Not slavery, but freedom. Not homelessness, but home. Many nations have been lifted to great heights when they faced difficulty and danger. They fought battles and won. They came through crises, droughts, plagues, recessions, depressions, defeats. I guess I could add pandemics, and were toughened by them. When times are hard, people grow. They bury their differences, hopefully. There's a sense of community and solidarity of neighbors and strangers pulling together. Many people who have lived through a war know this. The real test of a nation is not if it can survive a crisis, but if it can survive the lack of a crisis. Can it stay strong during times of ease and plenty, power and prestige? That is the challenge that has defeated every civilization known to history. Let it not, says Moses, defeat you. Sachs continues, the pages of history are littered with the relics of nations that seemed impregnable in their day, but which eventually declined and fell and lapsed into oblivion. And always for the reason Moses foresaw, they forgot. Memories fade, people lose sight of the values they once fought for: justice, equality, independence, freedom. The nation, its early battles over, becomes strong. Some of its members grow rich. They become lax, self-indulgent, over-sophisticated, decadent. For Moses, the primary thing is to remember. If we do, we can maintain our gratitude, our discipline, our traditions, our resolve, our community. Or as Moses puts it, and we say after meals, as Mark mentioned, when you have eaten your fill, give thanks to the Lord your God for the good land which he has given you. Someday we will emerge, God willing, from this pandemic. Our crisis, our own wilderness. Hopefully we will be chastened. Will we celebrate? Of course. But will we remember? What will we tell ourselves and our children happened? What history will we preserve? Will we be stronger, and for how long? Will we talk about how many simply wouldn't wear a mask to protect others and how many thousands of people died for this exercise of so-called rights? Will we talk about leaders who cared more about election results than lives? What will we have learned? Will we remember the emergency and medical workers who risked it all to protect us? Will we remember the postal workers, the delivery people, all those who had to venture out to keep the wheels turning? What good would Amazon or other remote retailers have been if no one delivered their stuff? How well would we do if people didn't make sure our utilities work, our air conditioning? What if our garbage wasn't taken away? We owe so much to so many essential persons whom we may not have previously recognized or even seen. Will we remember the poor and the marginalized who suffered the brunt of this pandemic? Will we remember that our vaunted economy and technology that met our every need or whim could not handle this act of God? That we had trains and planes and automobiles but couldn't go anywhere? That we had Michelin-starred restaurants but couldn't eat out? That we had fabulous theater throughout the country until they went dark? Have we learned, as it says in this week's portion, that man does not live on bread alone, or money alone, stuff alone, power alone, or success alone? In the spirit of Moses' retelling of his swan song, what is the story that we insist future generations know about this pandemic? That we are still vulnerable, still dependent on a force beyond our control or imagination. That we should continue to thank God for the wonders and miracles that allow us to breathe, to eat, to be sheltered, and that allow us to still manage to hold our world and our health together despite ourselves and our leaders. That we should repeatedly express our gratitude for the thousands of people who risk their lives for us and who continue to keep the world turning. That they should be properly and generously compensated for their essential work, and that no group should feel the brunt of our suffering. And if we don't remember, what will we have learned? Perhaps that we're never far from the wilderness after all. Shabbat Shalom.